The execution was scheduled for noon, Galactic Standard Time, because nothing says tyranny like punctuality. Across the Empire, holoscreens flickered to life, interrupting everything from planetary council meetings to soap operas. Billions watched, some in horror, others in morbid curiosity, as the scene unfolded on Zaratha's Prime. A parade of gallows stretched across the horizon, an industrial-scale production of death. The condemned, clad in torn rags, stood in disciplined rows, heads held high. If the Empire expected them to beg, cry, or plead, they were sorely disappointed. Instead, they whispered among themselves, exchanging what might have been final jokes. "Well," muttered a grizzled rebel, glancing at the rope, "at least they didn't go for the firing squad. Too expensive." His younger comrade grinned. "Budget cuts. Hanging is the eco-friendly alternative." Towering above them on an elevated platform, Grand Marshal Vexus adjusted his perfectly pressed uniform and smoothed his gloves. He had practiced this speech in front of a mirror, perfecting the right balance of menace and smug satisfaction. As he stepped forward, cameras zoomed in on his scarred face. His voice, rich with practiced authority, boomed across the planetary broadcast. "Citizens of the Empire, witness the cost of treason." He gestured toward the condemned. 80,000 rebels, agitators, and criminals exposed and brought to justice. Let this be a lesson to all who would defy the will of our glorious emperor. The emperor himself was nowhere to be seen, of course. Rulers of his caliber did not dirty their hands with the mechanics of oppression. That was Vexus's job, and he took great pride in it. The camera panned across the audience. Rows of imperial officers standing at rigid attention, a few bureaucrats looking mildly bored, and a handful of corporate elites who had paid handsomely for VIP seats. One of them, an investment mogul from the inner worlds, turned to his assistant and whispered, "Betting pool still open? I want odds on someone breaking the gallows mid-drop." Down below, a prisoner cleared his throat. "Quick question," he called out, raising a shackled hand. "What's the refund policy if this doesn't work the first time?" The assembled soldiers remained stone-faced, but one executioner stifled a laugh before regaining composure. Vexus shot the man a glare before returning his attention to the broadcast. "You prisoner. What is your name?" "Jarek Kale, former captain of the 42nd Rebel Fleet. Full-time insubordinate, part-time entertainer." Jarek flashed a grin. "Look, I appreciate the effort, but I have notes. The lighting? Too dramatic. The speech? Feels a little forced. And this whole death by hanging aesthetic. Retro, sure, but have you considered something with more flair?" Vexus clenched his jaw. He had encountered this type before. The rebels who believed defiance could be their final act of resistance. It was infuriating. "Your humor won't save you, Kale." "Who said I was trying to be saved?" Jarek leaned forward as much as his restraints allowed. "I just want to know if you've ever stopped to ask yourself, what if we're not the ones who should be afraid?" The wind shifted. A sudden, unnatural cold swept across the execution grounds. The sun dimmed, not behind clouds, but as if something vast and unseen was drawing light into itself. The holoscreens glitched, static crackling across their surfaces. Then, in perfect synchrony, every electronic device in the system shut down for exactly 3 seconds. When they flickered back to life, something was different. The executioners, who had been standing ready, now stood utterly still. The ones holding the levers trembled, their hands refusing to obey commands. One of them dropped his noose, stepping backward, his face ghostly pale. The crowd murmured. Vexus frowned and tapped his comm control report. "What the hell was that?" A voice crackled back, high-pitched and panicked. Sir, we don't know. Systems just died. We lost power for a full planetary rotation, but only for 3 seconds. That shouldn't be possible." Then came the whispers. They started low, an eerie susurration that carried through the air, growing louder. At first, they seemed like the wind, but then the words became clear, murmuring in overlapping tones, spoken in no single voice but in many. "Justice, justice, justice." A soldier staggered, clutching his helmet. "Do you hear that?" he gasped. Another recoiled from his own shadow as it twisted unnaturally. Justice, justice, justice. Vexus straightened, raising his voice to cut through the rising unease. Ignore it. The execution proceeds as planned. The executioners hesitated. The prisoners, however, stood straighter. A few exchanged glances, as if they knew something Vexus did not. Jarrett grinned, looking up toward the sky. You really shouldn't have done this, he murmured. Then, for the first time in history, death itself stepped into the world. The air above the gallows ripped open, a darkness, deeper than void space, unfurled. Not a shadow, but the absence of light, of warmth, of existence itself. It moved like a living thing, coiling and stretching. And from within, two burning eyes opened, vast and ancient, like dying stars in an infinite abyss. A figure stepped forward, draped in shifting, liquid black, neither solid nor entirely incorporeal. Its form flickered, unbound by the rules of the universe, unreal yet undeniable. It gazed upon the scene, and all sound vanished. Vexus stood frozen, his body betraying him. He had crushed entire planetary uprisings. He had reduced civilizations to ash. But this, this was not something he could kill, The figure raised a hand. No words were spoken. The gallows collapsed, not by explosion or force, but by conceptual erasure. The wood decayed into dust in an instant. The ropes unwove themselves as if time reversed. And the prisoners, every single one of them, remained standing, untouched. The assembled crowd screamed, some ran. Others collapsed where they stood, clutching their heads. One of the corporate elites, soiling himself, whispered, I didn't sign up for this. Vexus tried to lift his blaster, but his hand wouldn't move. His body did not belong to him anymore. The figure's gaze fell upon him, and Vexus felt his soul unravel. For the first time in his life, he understood what it was to be prey. And then, with a voice that did not echo, but instead existed within every living thing that heard it, the entity spoke a single word. Unacceptable. Then the feed cut to black. Somewhere in the vast, cold silence of the void, something chuckled. It wasn't a sound so much as a suggestion, a ripple in the fundamental nature of reality. Death, ancient, eternal, and generally indifferent, was amused. And that was a problem, because death did not often involve itself in the affairs of the living. Until today, on Zarathus Prime, Grand Marshal Vexus was having what could only be described as the worst day of his life. He had prepared for many scenarios, uprisings, assassinations, even planetary-scale mutinies. He had not prepared for an entity of unknowable cosmic force to personally critique his execution technique. His legs refused to move. His lungs forgot their job. And in the center of the execution ground, the avatar of death stood, watching him. This is impossible, Vexus stammered. You're a myth. Death tilted its head slightly, its form flickering in and out of reality, as if deciding whether to humor the notion of conversation. Then, in a voice that did not belong in this universe, it replied, So was justice, until today. Then things got worse. The first executioner exploded. Not in a gory, visceral way. No, that would have been a mercy. Instead, the man simply unmade himself, his body ceased to be, leaving behind only the faintest whisper of what had been, a shadow without a source. The others followed, one by one, their very existence plucked away like dust on the wind. The remaining soldiers broke. Some ran, some screamed, some collapsed in the fetal position and reconsidered their life choices. One particularly insightful officer tried to shoot himself in the head, only to find the bullet reversed midair and settle neatly back into the chamber. Death turned to him, its eyes burning cold. You don't get to choose. The officer dropped the gun and immediately began sobbing. Vexus, by some cruel cosmic joke, remained standing. He wanted to run. He wanted to disappear. Instead, his body refused every command except the one death permitted, to bear witness. The Empire's capital world of Ultrian 9 was already reacting to the disaster. Across the Empire, High-ranking officials received the last few seconds of the broadcast before the signal cut to black. The footage, an execution becoming an erasure, was not good for morale. The Imperial Senate was in chaos. Holoconferences erupted across multiple star systems. High Chancellor Regnus, a man whose main skills included embezzlement and dramatically sipping wine, stared at the blank screen in his war room. "So," he said slowly, swirling his glass, "would anyone like to tell me why an existential nightmare is currently making its way through our top officers?" A general cleared his throat. We think it's death, sir." Regnus blinked. "Like, metaphorically?" "No, sir. Quite literally. Death. The cosmic principle. The big guy. The one people pray to not to meet." Regnus finished his wine in one gulp. "I see. On Ultrian 9, panic spread like wildfire. People were terrified, and worse, hopeful, oppressed colonies received whispers of an unseen force tearing through the Empire's ranks. Riots broke out in cities where the boot of tyranny had once been heaviest. Some planets declared open rebellion. Others simply waited, watching, to see if the executioners would themselves be executed. Death was no longer a passive force. It was a reckoning. Meanwhile, Vexus finally regained control of his legs. He ran. It was an impressive effort. He shoved past his own men, sprinting through the crumbling remains of the execution site, weaving through panicked soldiers and discarded weapons. His goal was clear. Get to his ship and leave this cursed rock of a planet, He almost made it. Almost. Just before he reached the landing pad, reality itself shattered around him. The air split like fractured glass, and death stepped through. "You," Vexus gasped, falling to his knees. "Me," death confirmed. For a long moment there was silence. Then Vexus, a man who had orchestrated planetary purges without flinching, did something utterly pathetic. He begged. "I was following orders," he stammered. "I had no choice." Death did not move. Neither did they. Vexus's mind raced. There had to be a way out. Deals could be made, right? If death could talk, then it could listen. "Wait, I can help you," Vexus blurted. "You want justice, don't you? I have information. The Emperor, he ordered all of it. Every purge, every execution. I just followed commands. You want vengeance? Go after him." For the first time, death tilted its head in consideration. "Interesting," Vexus dared to hope. Yes, I can tell you where he is. His security codes, his escape routes." He stopped. His throat had sealed shut. Death sighed, a soundless exhalation that made the sky quake. "I was not asking for your help," it said simply. Vexus's body folded inward. Not crushed, not broken, simply removed from existence. And just like that, the Grand Marshal of the Empire was no more. Across the Empire, reports flooded in, generals vanishing, admirals found lifeless, executioners dying in their sleep, a creeping terror spread through the ranks. The people, long afraid of the Empire, were no longer the ones who had reason to fear. Death did not discriminate. It only balanced the scales. And now, it turned its gaze toward the throne of the Empire itself. Emperor Halric IV was having a bad day. He had endured many hardships in his reign. The assassination attempt on his coronation day, the economic collapse of the outer systems, that one time a rogue AI tried to declare itself as concubine. But this was new. The reports made no sense. Entire fleets gone, officers evaporating from reality. Planets he had once crushed under his boot, now rising in rebellion without so much as a formal declaration. His personal guard, the infamous Imperial Onyx Corps, had all resigned via mass hologram message, the most apologetic among them signing off with, "Sorry, but I'd rather not be unmade by a cosmic nightmare." The Emperor sat alone in his war room, staring at a galaxy that no longer feared him. "This is fine," he muttered. "I still have a plan." He did not have a plan. He had scientists, however, and they had spent the last 24 hours trying desperately to explain the unexplainable. The entity exhibits properties inconsistent with our understanding of matter, time, and probability. One of them had reported while sweating profusely. It is not bound by physical laws. Fantastic, Howard had replied. Shoot it. We tried, the scientist had said, eyes twitching. The bullets phased through it, reversed mid-air, and politely returned themselves to their holsters. Fine. Bomb it. We did. The bomb undeployed itself. The Emperor had gritted his teeth, then set it on fire. The scientist had stared at him, then slowly pressed a button on his wristcom. Security, I need to report that the Emperor does not understand how fire works. The Emperor had promptly shot him, which in hindsight felt a little pointless, given that death itself was coming for him anyway. Now, in his throne room, Howard sat stiffly, watching the grand doors at the end of the hall. They would open soon. He knew they would, and when they did, he would meet whatever lay beyond with the dignity befitting an emperor. Or, failing that, a really well-rehearsed tantrum. The silence stretched, thick with anticipation. Then the lights flickered. A creeping cold slithered into the air, not like a draft, but like the very concept of warmth had lost its grip on reality. The shadows at the edges of the room deepened, stretching, twisting. The throne's golden trim dulled, as if even metal understood what was about to enter. And then the doors opened. Death did not walk. It arrived. The space around it bent, refusing to define its form. It was not a being, not in the way mortals understood. It was a void wearing the suggestion of shape. It drifted forward, weightless, as if the very act of standing on the same plane as reality was beneath it. The Emperor swallowed. You've made your point, he said, voice steadier than he expected. The galaxy is afraid. The Empire is in ruins. You win. Death did not reply. It simply stood there watching. Howard's hands curled into fists. You could have struck me down first. You could have ended this with a single blow. But you didn't. Do you know why? He leaned forward, eyes gleaming. Because you need me. The room hummed, the very air vibrating with something unspoken. The Emperor took this as encouragement. Killing me won't stop the Empire. My governors, my admirals, my bureaucrats, they hold the real power. Without my command, the infrastructure collapses. And then what? Chaos. Anarchy. He gestured around the empty room. You think the galaxy will be better without me? You think death brings peace? The silence stretched. Then death did something unexpected. It laughed. Not loudly. Not cruelly. Just a quiet, knowing chuckle that sent something cold and final slithering down Howard's spine. I did not come for peace, Death said, voice like distant thunder. I came to end a story. The Emperor's smirk faltered. What? Death moved. Not stepped. Moved as if space itself allowed it to be closer, without ever crossing the distance. Suddenly, it was before the throne, its vast, shadowed form looming. Howard shot up, reaching for the ceremonial plasma blade at his side. You can't just erase me. I am history. I am the Empire. Death tilted its head. No. Howard barely had time to scream before his body ceased to exist. Not disintegrated. Not vaporized. Erased. The throne cracked. The walls trembled. And with the Emperor's last breath, so too did the Galactic Empire begin to unravel. The moment the news spread, the remaining officials folded like cheap furniture. Governors defected. Military leaders mysteriously lost the ability to remember their duty. Entire fleets declared independence. Planets celebrated openly. And in some corners of the galaxy, people threw parties so grand they risked violating several health codes. And somewhere, on a distant world, the first whispers of a new order took shape. The rebellion, once a desperate flicker, *** became a flame, ***. Death watched from the unseen places between existence, satisfied. Its work here was done. For now.